'Tis the season to be spooky. Or at least that was the idea when I started to do this video. Because all through this year, I've desperately wanted my local game store to run like this cool TTRPG horror event. You know, kind of what they do for like the free RPG day event stuff. Which I actually did earlier this year, which a video for which is going to be in the corner right about now. But I don't know what it is, but my local game store, and I'm presuming other game stores that do things like this, are just allergic to doing any other cool events like this. And they are doing something horror related, but it's Dungeons and Dragons related, which, disgusting! And we're not particularly fond of Dungeons and Dragons on this fucking channel. But despite the misgivings and renderings of my local game store, I have been able to secure a place to run All Flesh Must Be Eaten, the granddaddy of zombie TTRPGs, the very first TTRPG where you fought against the zombie threat, done by Eden Studios, on November 1st rather than Halloween night in particular, which is a little frustrating because that is the typical spooky day for us spooky boys, gals and non-binary pals. But it is also All Hallows Day. It is the first day of the Night of the Dead, or the Day of the Dead. I can't exactly remember the holiday. It's a 2-day holiday, so in many ways, this is far more spooky than Halloween proper. Controversial take, I know, but Lord by Night is not one to shy away from a bit of controversy every now and again. And so I thought I would use this opportunity to plan, organise and run a game of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, and then put out a video telling you lot how to run this classic zombie game. Because despite its reputation and just how popular zombies are in the media, there isn't a lot of coverage of this TTRPG online, which I think is a little sad, because I think we need to explore more cool horror games that isn't just Call of Cthulhu and the World of Darkness games. I pronounced Cthulhu really interestingly there, but that's alright, I'm just becoming a zombie and just like losing all the will to live and just want to eat on brains and God knows what else. Now, the really interesting thing with All Flesh Must Be Eaten, or one of the things that's really interesting about this game, is that it's really the most open and flexible TTRPG where you fight against zombies that ever exists out there. Because it's very clear by looking at other TTRPGs that they lean in one way or the other, they're inspired by one source or another. All Flesh Must Be Eaten is very clearly inspired by pretty much everything that came before it and what was happening at the time, which I absolutely love, but it can be just a little overwhelming trying to design the scenarios that you're writing, and also how exactly the zombies are going to operate in this world, because in all the TTRPGs with zombies in them, there's typically a way of taking them out properly. All Flesh Must Be Eaten allows you to really customise your zombies and give them all sorts of weird and wacky abilities, as it were, weaknesses, strengths, etc. and so forth. And given the fact that all these zombie abilities, weaknesses, defences, etc. and so forth have mechanics associated with them as well, it can be just a wee bit overwhelming, I feel, for a newer or less experienced games master to handle with all of that. So this video is also going to cover some tips and tricks that may or may not help you decide when you're building your zombies in All Flesh Must Be Eaten to make something really unique and cool. And of course I'm going to show you the sort of things that you may want to consider when planning a one-shot or campaign, and what I'm going to do to stretch out my initial idea for the one-shot, because as of the recording of this segment, I don't really have much idea of what I'm going to do at the moment, other than the fact that the players are going to be going to the cinema to watching a film local to where the game's being held, and some of the players may hear like inappropriate slurping noises, so they may think that something a bit more adult is going on. This is a horror game after all, and this is for adults, so I'm not really going to be letting any like teens or kids coming along to this. I won't get too graphic, of course, but you know, a little tongue-in-cheek humour there doesn't hurt, I suppose. But of course, said adult things aren't actually happening, it's zombie stuff that's happening. The players realise this film comes to an abrupt end, and then the apocalypse happens and chaos ensues. Now, as I'm doing this one-shot based in the UK, a lot of guns and weaponry are not going to be so readily accessible to my British players. That is until I remembered where I'm holding this game, and there's a strong army presence there. So I think in such a crisis, this particular place would be swarmed by the army immediately, and then they'll be swarmed by the zombies, and then players would have access to guns. So I think that works surprisingly well in my favour, but you also have to consider wherever it is in the world you are, the guns and the like may not be so readily accessible. So a simple solution to that is just put it where some of the guns is readily available, which is more often than not the US of A, but quite frankly I think that's just a little fucking boring, because so many fucking TTRPG settings and the like has the default setting of America, and who the fuck wants to be there right now, really? Like that little political stab aside, like, I think there's a lot more interesting things you could do if you set it in your own territories, with your own cultures, and see how authorities and the like would act to the zombie apocalypse. Also different time periods as well. And All Flesh Must Be Eaten is a very peculiar game, because if you think of any fucking form of film genre, there's a fucking source book for it. There's pirates, there's kung fu, there's fucking ringside wrestling, there's World War I, there's sci-fi, there's aliens. Like, there are so many weird, wacky zombie things out there, and I think Eden Studios just realised they had a fucking hit seller, and rather than develop other games, they just sort of ham-fist things into their zombie game. Like, it's such a bizarre thing, and you could use all those sorts of things to really make whatever sort of zombie adventure you want. So if you want fucking kung fu, World War I, ringside, it's there for you, but we're not going to be focusing too much on that. Now, if the players come up with interpretations of the pre-gens that I make that will force them to do that, then obviously I'll just hand wave whatever rules are in place and just let them have fun, you know. But I'm not going to go in there with the intention of being that silly with it. That's the players' rights to have, you know. So without further ado, I think we're going to cut to a more drier, nicer audio environment and show you how I'm going to be using the Mythic GM emulator, 2nd edition, to conjure up a All Flesh Must Be Eaten one-shot.
I think it goes without saying that the main break or make point with any zombie story, whether it be a video game, a comic, a film, a TV series, whatever your medium is, it's going to be the interaction the players or the cast, humans, whatever, have with the zombies and the general direction that you have with them, which sounds pretty bloody obvious, given the fact that we, in this video at least, are talking about running a zombie TTRPG. I think that a fair amount of people just see zombies as like a weak, poor man's like form of horror. But the thing that makes zombies particularly frightening, for me at least, other than the fact that guts and gore and the decades-long trauma that's been bestowed upon me from my father, which I've talked a little bit about in a video up there, and we'll talk about in future videos, I'm sure, it's the fact that zombies are a brilliant platform for talking about societal issues, racial problems, capitalism, and whatever current issues going on at the day. It's like why you saw so many zombie films in like the mid to early noughties that was just filled with zombies that came about because of a lab experiment gone wrong, because there was this more general fear of science and the government and them doing weird shit to us. I wish that we had that same fear now, but hey, fucking ho, that's a conversation for a different time. Maybe it's one that you could explore in a zombie game. Have a look at the George Romero stuff that he's done and just think how racially charged, like, the main Dead series that he did, you know? And it all comes really obvious to me, and this is coming from somebody that, yes, admittedly does love to look at things and like pick apart and then put them back together again and see how they work. At least I'm a mind-based analytical sort of thing. I'm not very good with the practical side of things. And I'm saying all these things because I'm just acknowledging that I have a bias, because despite people saying, oh, I don't have a bias when I'm saying this, everyone's got a bias. Like, it's impossible to have an opinion on something and not say something with a bias. But I'm getting off topic here. The reason why I'm doing all of this in this sort of like rambling, waffling, roundabout sort of way is because that All Flesh Must Be Eaten and other zombie TTRPGs I've seen just tend to focus on the fact that you're playing a game where you're shooting up and blowing up zombies, where I feel that you could have a lot more of an engaging time with your zombie campaign is that the campaign or one-shot actually had a story, or at the very least checkpoints if you're going to do what I'm going to be doing here and having them at the beginning of the apocalypse. There should be something to set it up, sure, but there should also be something they should be fighting for and protecting, and something that's going to keep them going on, rather than just like finding the first sharpest implement and stabbing themselves, or the first gun and blowing their brains out. What is it they have to fight for? What is it they have to protect for? What is it they love? What is it that they're fearful of losing if they are not there fighting and protecting with all their life to make sure that that thing or person doesn't get killed by some desperate other human or a zombie or some other poor unfortunate accident? Like, what is it that you're trying to say with your zombie story? What is it that's scaring you at the moment? What is it that's on your mind at the moment? What sort of issue that's happening in the world could you use to platform this story? Like, and I'm using story here very deliberately because all campaigns and one-shots we run in the TTRPG sense are a story, right? There's a beginning, a middle, and the end, and there are various different checkpoints that the player should be hitting, and when you reach the end, huzzah, it's the end of the story, it's the end of the campaign, or the end of a chapter, or whatever. Like, I'm not going to provide many answers here because I'm just going to be telling you about what I'm going to be doing and the particular methods that I'm going to be doing with this to generate something. But these should be things that you're thinking about. You should be considering really how you can make this game a lot better than anyone else who's going to run that for your friends or convention or whatever it is. Sure, this game does the whole blowing up zombie things really, really well, albeit with a bit of clunky maths. But I think that we could be doing so much more than just treating it as a dungeon crawl but with zombies, you know? Like, if you want to do dungeon crawls, there's other games that can do that quite nicely, but we're trying to focus on something that's more useful and meaningful and emotional, and finding ways to scare the shit out of our players that isn't just throwing zombies at them over and over again, because eventually that's not going to be very frightening for them, which is an issue you could argue with a lot of zombie media that goes on for a long portion of time. Like The Last of Us and The Walking Dead, I feel, have this issue, at least from what I have seen people talk about The Last of Us, which is interesting because with The Last of Us particularly, people don't talk about the zombies. Like, I haven't played it, but it's the idea from there's like some like parasitic spore that's like taken over everyone or something. I don't really know, but I know it's to do with like spores and fungus sort of things. People don't talk about that with The Last of Us. People talk about the characters and the stories and all the troubles that go through, the relationship between Ellie and Joel. With The Walking Dead, I'm assuming with the TV show more than the comics, like people talk about the cast and the problems they go through. The zombies sort of take a little bit of the back burner here. That's a plot device to keep things rolling along, and it's also part of the setting and part of the world building. So really, it should be the focus is on the characters and how they interact with the things around them, how the world responds to them, and vice versa. Which I feel is obvious to me, which isn't me saying that I'm better or bigger than anybody, it's just that it's just how my mind works, I guess, and it just may not be so obvious to other people, but maybe it is, it's just something that you've forgotten about and you're just trying to run this game or any other sort of horror game. You just need a good old reminder from your friendly lore and saviours. So what does All Flesh Must Be Eaten give you in terms of zombie generation? Well, besides its stat, which is found in a latter chapter in the book, within that same chapter, you'll find a whole host of like merits, flaws, traits, whatever you want to call them, that make zombies stronger, weaker, more defensive, more offensive, etc. and so forth. So it allows you to customize them and really throw your players off, because they probably expect coming into this with a little bit of meta plot and just general pop culture osmosis, I suppose, that's been supported by a load of other zombie stories throughout the years, is that generally speaking the weak spot on a zombie is the head, but it could be the arm. It could be the heart. They could have no weak spot at all, so you just have to completely tear them apart to know they're probably deceased, which is pretty frightening because it fucks about with expectations. And surprises and fucking about with expectations is always guaranteed to scare the shit out of people. Make a note of that, budding horror people. And whilst it's all very good having all these different bits and pieces in there that makes them tougher, stronger, weaker, both narratively and mechanically, just through its sheer presentation, it can be a bit daunting for somebody coming into this and knowing exactly what to pick or what makes sense. Okay, I want to tell this sort of story. How does any of this make sense of my zombie world? Why would I want zombies to fucking fly? Yes, that's a thing that's mentioned in here. But one of the tools that you can use that make that a lot easier for you, sort of, is going to the All Flesh Must Be Eaten site, or sister site to Eden Studios, which, I don't know about you, is the most fucking naughtiest piece of ass you will ever see this side of 2020, I guess. And on that site you're able to find this little page, which has all these different options that are mentioned in the core book that you can roll upon with a D100. And I don't like this purely because it's really ugly to look at, and not like a good hot Nosferatu zombie looking. I mean like, ugh, disgusting, crap, bright green font, ugh, poo-poo stinky. So what I've done is taken them and put them into a standard like PDF and just made it a lot nicer to look at. So I've done a lot of copy and pasting basically. Just real simple stuff, just so it's easy for me to use, and I don't want to pull out my own fucking eyeballs with my own fingers because it's so fucking ugly and incomprehensible to read. Now, you've probably noticed looking at this for a little bit now, is that whilst most of them refer to bits and pieces that are referred to in the core book, some of them refer to something known as the Zombie Master screen, and that is this, the Zombie Master being this game's equivalent of the Games Master, and that is not going to appear very well. You've got sort of like this orangey background, zombie face, and then you open this up, and it looks like that beautiful artwork by Christopher Shy, which regulars of the channel may recognise as an artist for Vampire the Masquerade Revised Edition, and you're not going to be able to easily find physical copies of this because I had to get this second hand off of eBay in fantastic condition, I have to say. I was very lucky with that, but you can purchase the PDF from Drive-Thru-RPG. A link will be in the description below. Now, when it says it comes on the Zombie Master screen, that's not actually true, because what it actually comes from is towards the back of this scenario, Coffee Break of the Living Dead. And I'll just read the back of it just to give you an idea about what the scenario may entail. As the banging outside of the door grew louder, he wrapped the necktie round his left arm, pulling it tight and staunching the flow of blood from the ragged gash just below his elbow. As he looked at the pulsing wound, he noticed something white and shiny within. One of the creature's teeth. It must have lodged in his radius when that thing bit him. He squeezed his eyes shut and gripped the tooth between two fingers. Screaming to abate the pain, he yanked, pulling the cracked fang from his arm and throwing it across the room. He knew then that he was going to die. The Zombie Master screen is a supplement for All Flesh Must Be Eaten role-playing game. In it you'll find a 4-panel handy reference of charts and tables for all Zombie Masters, including the fear table, equipment charts, the outcome table, and much more. Coffee Break of the Damned. A ready-to-run 48-page introductory adventure for immersing players in a world of zombie survival horror. 6 pre-generated cast members with full backgrounds that may be played as is, individualized as desired or used as examples for the creation of new characters. Additional game material for any Flesh Must Be Eaten game, including zombie cast member creation rules, which is not what I was referring to. I'm going to be, generating zombies rather than making people play zombies. Although that being said, that would be a rather neat idea, that if the player characters die, I then hand them over a sheet and say, okay, you're a zombie now. Ooh. That'd be pretty fun for a convention theme such as the one that I'm running. Go me. New qualities and aspects and campaign levels, and a short essay on zombie survival, which is all a very worthwhile read. But specifically what I was referring to, some of the zombie qualities are found unique into this, and I think it's a little cheeky, I guess, to have that up there and then make people feel, oh, I don't have that, oh, I have to spend more money. It would be nice if that stuff was just reprinted there, I suppose. But it's easy to find on Drive-Thru-RPG. Again, link in the description below. You purchase the Zombie Master screen, you get both of these bundled into one, which is lovely stuff. And of course, as I've mentioned already, I've got the little PDF that I'm going to be using with this, and with a D100, which I should probably get out now, I'm going to start rolling, and together we are going to generate some zombies. And what I'm going to do, we're going to use this D10, which I don't know how well that's going to appear, sort of like a cheese yellow colour, and I recently got a white set as well that was kind of like the shade of bone. Yeah, kind of, it looks the same sort of yellowy colour, but there is like a little tinge of dirt in that white, so let's create some zombies. Right, so I've got a pad of paper sort of thing and a pen, and I'm just going to be writing down the different things that will be rolling up for the time being. I will do all the stat creation stuff later on. This is just to demonstrate how straightforward this is. If you're really stuck for generating zombies, you can just roll a bunch of D100 tables and then try and make sense of some sort of narrative in your head, especially if you're wanting to do a game where you want the players to discover how the zombies came into being, or you have a bunch of players that want to try and save the world, which again, this game book really helps you accommodate with as well. So I'm just going to make a little note there. Zombie shiz. Very simple stuff. So let's roll on the first table that I have here, which is the weak spot. T100 all the way through. Okay, and it got 98. Holy shit. Vulnerability, which comes from the Zombie Master screen. The thing on the website doesn't mention the page numbers either, which is also really annoying, so I had to do that myself, and I recommend you doing that as well. So page 44, what does vulnerability offer here? Sometimes aiming for the head is not the best way to bring a walking corpse to its knees. Sometimes, particularly susceptible to certain substances, most zombies are instantly aware of their weakness. Oh, that's right, this is basically the one that turns zombies into vampires, like they could be allergic to water, sunlight sort of thing. Ooh. The power of the aspect is set by the Zombie Master depending on the nature and availability for the substance. This aspect is only worth -1 points for unusual items like gold or rare type of wood from the Amazon. That's actually an example here. For -3 points, however, more common objects such as silver, steel, iron, or even plastic are an anathema for the risen dead. For -5 points, water could do the trick. That is very interesting, and you know, it's interesting to me because this is primarily a Vampire the Masquerade focused channel. So having something that's vampire related mentioned here is pretty cool, I think. Also, the OG vampire stories of like folklore were the first zombies, really, and if that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, do your research. And I'm not doing that as like this derogatory thing. Not a lot of people are aware of this, and I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do, like connecting the two. And given the fact that I'm going to be doing this game at night, and it's going to be set at night, you know, watching the film, I think there could be some really interesting things I could throw at this, but I'll come out with the specifics later on. Again, I'm just going to be writing that down. So let us move to getting around, which is basically going to determine whether they're going to be sprinters or not. 28, which gives us slow and steady, which I believe from that wording is the walking bunch. And I didn't actually put down the page numbers from the main book, only the Zombie Master screen, but then again it tends to go about in a little chronological order. These traditional undead cannot run, or even when they walk they do not so much less than normal human speed. On the other hand, like all zombies, they never get tired. So yeah, we've got the standard zombies that have these particular weaknesses, but then again, if they have something that's really wacky later on, like the ability to fly, yes, that's actually something that's listed here, that might change the game a little bit, and I might change that to getting around, because if they can fly at fucking supersonic speed, then the ability to walk is not fucking needed. But we'll see, we'll come up with something creative, I'm sure. Then we move on to, alright, so the special movement table is connected to getting around. Okay, I'm going to roll a d10, see if there is a special movement involved here. Even numbers, there is going to be a special movement involved. Odds is going to be no. Even numbers, yes, there's going to be a special movement involved with these zombies. And what is it that we're going to have? 79, which gives us the answer of climbing. Fair enough. So people think they can get away with them just like climbing something, but no, they can climb up walls. Actually, is that the sort of thing that referring to here? Climbing. As a general rule of thumb, zombies do not climb. First, they tend to think 2 dimensions, food, and more food. And second, climbing usually requires more coordination and dexterity than the zombie will ever have. In this case, the zombie has the ability to climb through a combination of heightened dexterity and undead strength. The zombie can scale surfaces that would give pause to an experienced mountain climber simply by not caring about pain and using its strength to claw whatever surface it needs to climb, so I take that as a yes. Thus, the zombie can easily scale things like chain link fences, wooden barricades, and even walls of some houses and buildings. It cannot climb a vertical concrete, the glass walls of skyscrapers, or any other tough surface. Gain climbing 2 skill, climbing speed 3. Feet, 1 meter per turn. Okay, so there are some limits there, but it will give them some food for thought. Oh shit, these slow fuckers can climb, and nobody can climb. Well, a lot of people can't climb quickly, so not the weird wackiness that I thought it was going to be, but it's sort of giving them a bit of mobility. So let us move on to the strength just to see how tough they are. 76, which gives us strong like bull. Not a bull, because that's actually what's written here. This zombie has returned with a great deal more going on in the strength department. While much stronger than average, the zombie is still not beyond human range or experience, at least with respect to strength. Strength 4. Okay, so stronger than most, but not like Incredible Hulk strength, which would be monstrous strength. Okay, that's absolutely fair. Now, do we find out if they have a special strength quality? We're going to roll another d10. Evens, yes. Odds means no. 4, so that's an even, so yes. So let us roll on the special strength table. That gives us 17, which gives us flame resistance. Fucking hell. Yeah, I imagine it'll be quite frightening, like, because I've mentioned already, this is sort of where I'm going to be running this has a strong army presence. So I think that if anybody's prepared for this, it would be them. The army comes along, hazmat suits, flamethrowers sort of thing, and then they realise that the zombies have a bit of an issue with flames. Being buried next to an abandoned asbestos factory can have its advantages. Yes, that's what the wording is. It's got a little weird sense of humour all the way through this. Whatever the reason, the zombie is now resistant to fire in all its many forms. Zombie take half +1 or no +3 damage from fire. Zombies who have fire as their weak spot cannot have this special feature, obviously. So I kind of like the idea that they have they're completely resistant to fire, just because I think that would just scare the shit out of people, especially when players go outside, they see that the army's turning up. Again, hazmat flamethrowers, and it just does nothing. Again, that adds a level of danger to them, because you've now got a zombie on fire walking towards you. Kind of makes you wonder what sort of fucking weird-ass experiment's gone on here, because I don't think this is going to be like a virus or something. Or maybe it is. Who knows? So let's just move on to the senses table. 48, which gives us the result of Like the Dead, which doesn't sound particularly great, in their favour at least. A few days, months, years underground hasn't done wonders of the zombie senses. They are significantly less than human standard. The zombie can only make up dim forms of moving around. Just the outline of human figure, for instance. Their senses of smell and touch are gone completely, and their sense of hearing is pretty shabby. Basically, the zombie will chase down anything that moves without too much discrimination. Even so, it will not attack other zombies. A zombie always knows a brother living dead. It says that. Perception 1. Fair enough. So we've got Like the Dead. So we're really going for like the standard zombie thing here, besides the fact that they can climb and they're inflammable. Now, do they have a special sense thing going on just to make that more interesting? Again, I'm going to roll a d10. Evens is yes, and odds is no. Got a 2. So that is a yes. So let's just roll on the special senses table. 77. There are a lot of fucking 7s with this, I have to say. Is infrared vision. Fucking hell. So there's a lot of heat involved with this. No, zombie elves or dwarves are not the only ones to come back with infravision. Again, silly humour. These zombies hone in on just the heat given off by living creatures, just like a guided missile. In fact, most zombies with this ability can only tell the living from the dead because of this heat signature, which kind of makes sense from what we've seen already. This allows them to hunt day or night, but can cause some problems on a really hot day when even zombie bodies reach temperatures of over 98 degrees. Fahrenheit, obviously. Also, the zombies can be distracted by heat sources. High heat sources. Range equals 10 times perception in yards. Okay, so they like the dead and they have infravision, which, given the fact that I'm going to be doing this the present day in November, that's going to cause some interesting results. So people are going to have less likelihood of escaping. So let us move on to that all-important need to feed. Basically, how frequently do they need to eat, or do they just keep eating? Or not at all, because that's an option here. 61, which gives us the result of daily. Now, what does that actually give us? Everyone needs 3 square meals a day to make the most out of life, and these zombies are no exception. They don't need to eat a whole lot, but they must consume at least 10 ounces of whatever it is they crave each day. After a day without eating, the zombie starts to lose strength. For every day of starvation, the zombie loses 1/4, blah blah blah. Once strength drops below 0, the creature is very weak and can do little more than drag itself slowly along. Lack of food will destroy the zombie, but it will render it unable to do anything but lie around and moan, "Brains." Again, actual writing within this book. Probably where the whole tongue-in-cheek thing and not serious thing comes from. Okay, so not as dangerous, at least in terms of the eating malarkey. But then again, people can be greedy. So next is the menu. What it exactly is that they're eating. 82, which gives us blood. Great. Fucking creating vampires. It's not just for vampires anymore. The zombie needs to drink flesh, human blood to keep going, which I think actually mates very well with the little innuendo joke thing I had created earlier on. You know, implying that like what's going on in the cinema. The slurping noises mean it's not just me being cheeky now, there's an actual reason for it. Unlike certain suave bloodsuckers who can take a little and leave the victim living, zombies take to break the skin in just as much as they can, as quickly as they can. Just for future reference, the larger the holes in the victim, the more blood available for the hungry, ungrowing undead. Which is interesting because they need at least 10 ounces of whatever they can for the daily thing. But 10 ounces of being sucked off like that. So it will require a bit more effort. And they're flame resistant. Fucking hell. I didn't want to make vampires, but I'm just going to stick with the tables here and just be fair about it. Alright, then we've got intelligence. I have a somewhat good idea about what it's going to be. 64, which gives us a tool, and then we have to roll on a D100 again, which determines how good their power level is and basically how well they can use tools, which is going to be frightening if they've got some coordination like that. What is that? 37? Yes, 37, which gives us power level 1. At level 1, the zombie can use simple tools like clubs, doorknobs, melee weapons, and anything else that does not require too much thinking. Oh, I think that just by itself is pretty frightening because, you know, they lock themselves in, the players lock themselves in a room, they lock the door sort of in, they begin to barricade things, and you think they've done a good job of just force their way through. But having zombies that understand doors, end quote, let me know in the comments what I've just taken that from. It's frightening in all of itself, honestly. I mean, I think it'll be a bit silly at this point with everything that describes that they've got too much intelligence with that. So I kind of like that. That's pretty neat. So that takes us to spreading the love, which is basically how the infection spreads. 54, which gives us the result of only the dead. Now, what does that mean here? The zombie has to actually kill its victims in order for them to come back as a member of the club. Anyone killed by a zombie rises again within a few hours. Of course, if the victim falls prey to a pack of zombies seeking fresh meat, there may not be much left for her to rise up again. However, most zombies stop their feeding once a person dies, so there's usually a few pounds of meat missing, not enough to really make a difference. And if they're only interested in the blood, that really is going to speed up the process, unless you've got like a pack of them that just suck them to death sort of thing. But that's interesting. Only the dead. So the typical zombie thing. So the next feature is the special features, and there are 2 tables for this, and I think it's a bit weird how it's structured, because you've got special feature 1, which is just either rolling on special feature table 2 twice or thrice or not at all, but there isn't one for like rolling on once. So let us see if our zombies have any special features at all that makes them a bit more dangerous and hostile, because at the moment they don't have a lot going for them other than the fact that they can't catch fire. That gives us the result of 76, which means that we roll twice on the special feature table. That gives us a 79, which means the first special feature that they have is detachable body parts. Okay. So from that, I'm assuming that if you chop off a limb, you're going to have like a hand crawling after you sort of thing. The zombie has the bizarre ability to actually separate off parts of its body and let them act on their own. The most common use of this power is removing a hand and letting it crawl about, the fiend in the search of its prey. The zombie has full control over what the detached body parts do and even sense what it senses, whether it actually owns by touch. Tool-using zombies can use this ability to sneak their hands through a hole of a window and have the crawling fiend unlock a door from the inside. Others throw their hands like weapons and have them latch onto the necks of their prey they're trying to run away. Of course, the zombies can detach any part of the body, including internal organs. Thus, small intestines become animated, constricting snakes and so forth. The possible uses are endless. The specifics of this feature, including any special damage, are left to the zombie master's discretion. So I guess the players do have quite a lot to worry about now if there's fucking intestines and whatnot can move about as well. That's really finite. Okay, so we roll it on twice. We roll it on the table again. 65, which gives us the result of Dr. Doolittle, which comes on the Zombie Master screen booklet. Normally, zombies can only gain sustenance by feeding on human brains, organs, blood, etc., shambling dead with this aspect and gain the same feeding benefits of animals. Of course, it is not so horrible when zombies are not involved. Some call these zombies namby-pamby, others label them flexible and adaptive to their surroundings. It is all a matter of taste, really. Yes, again, something that's written in this book. Even the name is just a bit silly and ages it a little bit. Now, I'm a little pensive about that one, just because a lot of people don't like animals being harmed, and I can't see animals coming up in this very urban setting, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to re-roll that one. I know I said I was going to treat the results as were, but I'm just trying to think what will actually be beneficial here. So I'll roll that again. If, however, I roll on Dr. Doolittle again, I will just keep that in here. 48, which gives us Bound, which again comes from the Zombie Master Screen booklet, page 45. I have a feeling I know what this will entail, which might make things very horrifying, like sort of Resident Evil style. Bound. Freedom is for the living, not the dead. Sometimes the living dead were created to be servants, other times they were just seem compelled by inscrutable rules. Either way, some of the walking dead have fewer inalienable rights, and some are little more than robotic slaves. The aspect has two parts, establishing control and command possible. Both parts range from -1 to -5. The total value of the aspect of the sum of both parts. The precise measure of each part is the set discretion of the Zombie Master for Oh, I see. So this is actually you hold on to certain stuff to control them. Nah, not fun with that one. Third time's the charm. 91, which gives them Spitter. I like that one. And Spitter's actually in the book. Yeah, because I mean, you could make sense like the weak substance could be used to control them, but that kind of removes the horror, especially for like a convention thing. It just like kills all the momentum. So of course, if you're doing this same method, by all means change the results to fit your fancy. But I'm not happy with the bound one working here, so we'll go for Spitter. The zombie can spit some sort of toxic fluid. Often this is the form of saliva, embalming fluid, and other undefinable internal liquids. The substance causes living skin to itch and burn, much like a very bad case of poison ivy or jellyfish stings. The real threat this spitting attack is that the zombie manages to hit the target in the face and the toxin gets in their eyes. The burning sensation effectively blinds the target for D4 hours, unless she can somehow rinse the fluid from her eyes with lots of running water. Range equals half the constitution in yards. Spit does regular damage per turn equal to half the power level of the feature. Armor is ignored if the face is targeted. That one, I think, is a lot more interesting because there's shambling hordes of wandering about. Oh, they can get us. Like, and if we're leaning into the ye old vampire idea, one of the things that people would think that would make people vampires if they dug up the grave and they'd see their bellies were swollen, because when you die the gases build and whatever and it just becomes really swollen, and people thought, oh, they're a vampire, look at the fucking body, look at the transformation happening, and then they let out basically a loud fucking fart as everything just blows up. Really grim details, but the things you learn studying vampires. And I like the idea of like this sort of spitting attack that sort of like causes the bellies to swell and then outward like that, sort of like some weird fucking frog thing. But yeah, that's a really cool little idea. And then we've got this other table that I'll roll on now, which is basically their skill sets, which I don't think would apply here just because they're essentially the dead. They don't know able to use much. Let's roll it anyway and see what we'd get. 18, which is 3 skills at 2, so yeah, not a lot, which I will customize later on. So basically, we've got these zombies, right, that you can't set on fire, are shambling hordes. They have, in order to become one of them, they have to be killed, and they feed on blood, basically sucking people off to dead. And they have detachable body parts. I forgot about that bit. They can detach their body parts and organs and whatnot and control them and actually detach and lob them at people. But I think players are going to have more fun thinking, oh, we'll just chop off the head, and the head just sort of wanders about. Oh, there's also the weak spot, isn't there? Do they? Of course, they don't have a weak spot. They are vulnerable to a specific substance. And I think with the detaching body parts, I think that unless the players find this particular substance, they're not going to be able to have much fun killing the zombies. Not fun in the sense that they'll have fun like killing the zombies until they completely smash the brains in, I guess, which is sort of a given, I guess, but that's going to require a lot of work. But what would the substance actually be? I'm not too sure, but I think in order to try and work that out a little bit more, I'm going to have to start generating the plot a little bit. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video I was going to be using something known as the Mythic GM emulator, specifically the 2nd edition, to be creating the one-shot for this. But what the fuck is it? Well, regular goated-based listeners of the channel will know that I've mentioned this book quite strongly and fondly throughout the course of the channel's existence, and I actually have a review of this coming up later this year, which isn't actually that far ahead when this video comes out, so keep your nostrils peeled for that. But what Mythic is, if we're going to go by the book's subtitle, it allows you to create dynamic role-playing adventures without a games master, by Tanner Pigeon. And I love solo play. I love being able to play any sort of game system by myself, whether it is Vampire the Masquerade, Wraith the Oblivion, Call of Cthulhu, or in this case, All Flesh Must Be Eaten, by myself. But there are so many tools and tables in here that it's really possible just to take these abstract ideas, thoughts, descriptors, motivations, etc. and so forth, to help plot a campaign or one-shot. Because I see a lot of criticism with things like this, like, oh, it's a solo tools, I won't need that, I play games properly, or I'm not going to do solo play because that's kind of sad. Well, let's just think about not too long ago where it was seen as generally really sad to be playing TTRPGs at all, just how sad it is, like playing make-believe of full-ass grown-up adults with dice, playing fairy tale stuff, like, perceptions and things change, and I think we should really be applying our brain cells a lot more and just think how different things were not too long ago, and in many instances how different they still remain to be. But, you know, little digs aside, Mythic is a really useful tool that allows you to develop campaigns and one-shots because it's a bunch of random tables, essentially, and you just roll on these things and come up with, like, thoughts and descriptors to come up with adventures that, traditionally, in a solo environment, helps you to propel the plot forward because there isn't a games master to work with, because you're either doing it by yourself or like some duo stuff with a mate or so, and using this as like the main games master decision making thing. But it's just good, and we're going to be using this right now to be developing our one shot for our game of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, and we're probably going to have some ideas along the way that allows us to give us some thoughts about where these zombies fucking came from. Like, why is it that these zombies are resistant to fire? Why these zombies are like spitting up freaking acid blood or whatever at people. So on a fresh piece of paper with a bit of pen that's disappeared somewhere, oh, it's there. I checked behind my ears because you probably noticed I put pens and pencils behind my ears a lot. I'm going to be using the same set of D100s, a D100 and a D10, and we're just going to move you out of the way, my little friend. Put that over there. I'm going to open them up on the action tables, which is the ones I tend to use the most often, just because that's how I do things, because first edition didn't have all these other fancy panty descriptor things, so I just used that. And we're just going to keep rolling on this until we have a decent plot to be working with. I can just fine-tune things when I'm coming up with shit on the fly, because I don't do a lot of note-taking. This is probably going to be the most note-taking that I'm going to be doing for like the entire process of this game. I would show you like a digital version on the screen, but quite frankly I can't be arsed, and it's literally just a bunch of tables there. Lovely stuff. Let us start with the actual synopsis that I have so far with this, where the players and the pre-gens that I will make shortly after putting together this scenario here, so I actually know the sort of people I'm going to be creating, because it makes sense to come up with the scenario before you come up with the pre-gens, you know? So the players fit the world rather than the other way around. Is that different characters and different backgrounds are going to be going to the cinema, like going into the local town centre and be watching a film, and what films they'll be watching, I'll give them a list, and depending on the sort of film they're going to watch, I'll do something a little bit different. Like I had that idea of like the couple like sucking each other off for being a bit adult humour sort of thing, but they find out that it's actually zombies, and with the things that we rolled earlier on, it turns out that these zombies are feeding on blood, so that actually makes a lot of sense. It's kind of funny how that turned out. And then from there onwards, the plot opens up, and we see that the army's involved because they keep mentioning this is a very army-centric area, and we find out that the zombies are resistant to flames. So I'm actually going to start rolling on these tables now to give us some direction about what to do next, because the players are obviously going to try and get away from these sort of things and like hide and take shelter, whatever it is, but I need something to direct them a bit more, to give them some form of fucking structure, because the cinema isn't that big and it's not going to take them the whole 3 hours to get out. It'll probably take like half an hour, maybe an hour, just to set all of this up. An hour being really generous with that. But anyway, let's just roll on this thing and see what things we can generate on the thing. So the way that Mythic works is you've got 2 sets of tables, the action tables, 2 sets of D100 tables. It's all D100 stuff. You've got action 1 and action 2 in this case, and the first roll I rolled was 3. Okay, interesting. Which gives us the prompt of activate. I'm going to write this down because I will forget. And then we go to the second table, which gives us 93, which gives us the result of value. Activate value. Which sort of makes me lean that these sorts of people like this is some sort of experiment that's activating the dead in this sense. I'm not too sure if I'm totally happy with that idea. If I swapped 93 and made it 39, what would that give me? Hindrance. Well, that's the complete fucking opposite. Activate value or activate hindrance. Okay, what if I swapped activate around and made that 30? Extravagance. That doesn't help at all. Okay, let's make the idea them being an experiment work. Activate value. Or maybe it's not so much. Okay, activate hindrance. That could be like a special ops force thing. So the army turns up as planned, and they're dealing with zombies, like taking them out. It's not really working. Like at best, it's slowing them down. Like intestines and whatnot, just squirming about. Maybe we could extend that a bit more to bones to make like fucking weird fucking bear trap sort of thing. I like that. I think that will play into rather nicely. So like the thing from the thing, you know, where they're dealing with that guy and the chest opens up and chomps somebody's hand off. Something like that. Ooh, that's nasty. Lovely stuff. So maybe they're dealing with the army, they're getting away, they're thinking that they're safe, but then the players and people are captured by this special ops force because now everyone is infected, that there's something in the air, and because it's like late autumn, early winter period, well, it's like late autumn, like there's another month to go before it's winter, like it's flu season basically, and there is just like something in the air that's infecting people. Now everyone is now going to have to be treated. So okay, so players run around a bit like special ops, so obviously this is like a secret government thing now, so it becomes a bit more serious. So I think them escaping and running about like takes up like the first or like couple of scenes, or you know, like the first act as it were, which is like 2 or 3 scenes all together, like the players going to the cinema, interacting with NPCs, or maybe if like a couple or whatever, like actual couple, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend sort of scenario, and they decide to make their characters connect, and obviously just hand wave things away. Like them all interacting with each other, you know, going to the loo, getting snacks, whatever, role playing that, just making it really nice and friendly, stuff that I usually wouldn't focus too much attention on. They go down the film, they have their different interactions, they find out there's zombies about, they're flame resistant, they're spitting all sort of weird shit at people. They escape. They all band together, sort of thing. They're all like chatting away. Just when they think they're safe, van comes in, forces people out the car, and that moves on to the second act, I feel, which is where we find out a bit more about this sort of secret facility, and maybe it's at the actual army location and we're in the town. I'm actually going to employ one of Mythic's staple features to decide that, which is like the Fate chart, which is a D100 chart, which I will put on screen now because I think this is like generally well-known knowledge within the TTRPG space. It looks a bit confusing, but if I say it's like an under D100 system, that should make things a lot more easier to understand. So if we treated something that was like 50-50, right, where you've got that big old 50 in the middle, the 10 on the one side and the 91 on the other side, the chaos factor would say it's 5, which basically dictates how much you are or are not in control of a scenario if you're treating this as a solo thing. If it's between 10 and 50, that's a yes. If it's below 10, it's an exceptional yes, so it's like yes with added goodies on top of that. If it's between 50 and 91, then the answer is no, and if it's other than 91, it's an exceptional no, which is like no, but, or no with some extra goodies on there. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to treat this as like the 50-50 chaos factor 5, because this is just me planning shit. Would this be the actual army bit? Yeah, I think so. This is the fucking UK. They are fucking incompetent, because I think them being driven off to fucking, I don't know, like London or whatever, or some other secret site is a bit nonsensical. So yeah, let's just roll that 50-50, see what our result is. So that's 30 exactly, which is between 50 and 10, so that is a yes. So special off, secret site on campus, and I will know what that means when I come round to planning things proper. So that's our first act, most of which I've already planned already, but the fact that we now have that this is like a special ops that's like moving the infected away, so kind of like the crazies sort of thing. Both the crazies are great and they have different perspective on things, but that's kind of the image that I'm going with here a little bit. And like part of that opening act is them like being scanned like with some sort of sense to see whether they're infected or not, and I could do like a generic roll, an endurance test to see how well they're infected, or maybe when they're all driving away, have them all roll their endurance, and that could determine who or is not infected. I like that. That's a pretty neat idea. So Act 2, I'm going to make note of this, Act 1, Act 2, and this is where most of the planning is probably going to be happening now, because I keep saying I've planned most of Act 1 just as I was rambling shit earlier on in this video out and about. So let's just roll the action tables once more. We're not going to be using the descriptor tables just yet, because obviously this is going to be very clean, sterile environment. 1. Abandon. What a fucking terrific start to that's going to be. So it's going to be really chaotic straight away, I think. 25 on the second table is enemy. Abandon enemy. Well, I think that just means that things are going to go to shit pretty fucking quickly. But why? So I'll just put a note there. I'll put an invasion that people are going to be like fleeing from everything that's coming on. Like, that's probably how the players are going to know that they can climb, unless one of the players does something. Because we found in the description earlier on in the book that they can climb chainmail fences. So maybe there's like a not so guarded area and they actually begin to climb over. See, it's all connecting together. But that's obviously going to be like the main bit of the act, as it were, or the latter part of it. But I actually want to decide a bit more about what's going to happen beforehand. 90 on the first table gives us the result of take. 97 weapon. Take weapon. You see, and I wanted this to be the beginning bit, but I actually think this is going to be the case of this special ops, like anyone who can fight sort of thing, or maybe kill everyone. Like, nobody should be allowed to escape. I think that might be the angle that we're going to go with this. Actually, I can do a mythic roll to do this, to see what's more likely, like whether that means just kill everyone, or like if you can fight sort of thing. Because I'm a deeply cynical bastard that's just lived through the last 15 years of a conservative government, where the penultimate Prime Minister Sorry, the one before the penultimate one, Boris Johnson effectively wanted to fucking kill everybody with, like, the COVID scenario. I'm actually going to say that he's nearly certain that this military group that's, like, keeping the infected away from the main infected will probably just start to kill them outright, which will encourage people to pick up weapons and defend themselves. So, using nearly certain, we're now looking from 85 to 17, which will guarantee whether it's a yes or not. So those odds become a lot more favourable to the result of yes. Now, if that chaos factor was 6, it wouldn't be from 85 to 17. It would actually be from 90 to 18. So the higher the chaos factor, the more likely our yes result's going to be. And with first edition, it's the other way round. So that is 72. So yeah, I would actually like to do a roll now to describe the sort of environment that our players are going to be used to, like those who are infected and those who aren't are going to be segregated, obviously. So we're going to use the descriptors to try and come up with sort of environmental stuff to see how well they're going to be treated, the general environment, etc. and so forth. So, descriptor table 1, and this is the general one because they're more specific ones. 39 gives us the result of frighteningly, that's ominous, and 96. No, sorry, 66. 66. Mysterious. Well, that to me feels that a load of them are just going to be shoved in a room. Because it's like sterile, clean, white LED lights, put them in a room sort of thing. Just seeing how they react, I think. The infected are going to get shoved in a room, and then just seeing if people... And I'm probably going to have to put like an NPC who's had a bit of blood drain from their neck or whatever, and this has been purposeful just to see how they're going to react and like experiment sort of thing. Yeah, that's pretty fucking dark. I'm going to stick with that. So that's the infected angle of it. How about those that aren't infected? I'm doing that because they're obviously all infected. That's what we're going with here. But it doesn't answer the question of, like, why are they fucking flame resistant? So I don't think we might need an answer to that, honestly. But 100. Fucking hell. Yieldingly. I did not know that was a word. Every day's a school day. And 96 again. Fucking hell. So it was 66 before, it's now 96 now. Vibrant. Yieldingly implies a submissive. Vibrant means colourful. Okay, so this is like a real fucking dark contrast. Like, one half of the group is going to go like, don't worry, you're safe, we're going to keep you safe, you've got lots of food, hot drinks, etc. and so forth. Very passive, submissive sort of thing. Obviously, you feel that something a bit more sinister is going to be happening. Like, oh, what's happening to my mum? Don't worry, we're going to take care of them. This has gotten out of hand, like some sort of like weird experiment, like nuclear, not, you know, the sort of thing like with the whole thing with the crazies, is like experimental weapon like crashes into the site and like it becomes a decontamination zone sort of thing. I am just fucking copying the crazies, aren't I? But I think it's a bit more organised because neither side's all organised. But it's like, you know, we're going to look after you, etc. and so forth. And then we cut to the other bit where actually they're being put in an experiment with some potential zombies. And I think it's from that side that we see the invasion happening, and then there's just these knock-on effects there. And then when everything hits the shit, not too long afterwards, with the zombies climbing over the fences, which, as I said already, I think is going to be like the main way that the players are going to work out that fucking shit that these lot can climb. And of course body parts as well, they can detach their limbs and throw them over whatever. Or maybe this is another careless element of it, that they're shooting through the chain metal fence, oh, they're dead, and then they realise that their arms are climbing up as well, choking on people, etc. and so forth. That's good, I think. All with just rolling a couple of word prompts on these tables. And I'm just going to roll on an Act 3, which will obviously be then like the aftermath of them escaping, I think. So let's just see what Act 3 gives us when we go back to the action tables. 25, which gives us the answer of create. 85, create success. I mean, that sounds very fucking hopeful. But in this essence, it could be the fact that they're completely overswarmed. That the creating success actually means that the zombie threat is actually too much. There's actually a lot more of them now, because without giving too many details away, there's actually the nearby fucking town that they could all be swarming into. The other bits of woodland or whatever they could be coming through as well. So what started out as like a very small contained area now is actually becoming a fucking national problem. And for it all to happen so suddenly, sort of makes it very alarming. Well, as if it wasn't alarming already, but you know what I'm trying to say, that it suddenly becomes a much bigger issue. And I know what that means when it comes to plotting things out proper. So if we just pad that out a bit more, we're going to get the answer of 84 in the action table. Number 1. 84 is stop. And 10. Exactly. Burden. You see, the thing that comes to my mind with that, and it's always a good idea with these tables to go like the knee-jerk response, is that, with how I would describe it, focus on the character's emotions, just stop resisting. Like, are you going to keep fighting for it, or are you just going to run away, sort of thing? Like, what's the next step? Like, maybe leaning into those more harrowing descriptions, which I'm actually going to write down. Yeah, I think Act 3 is more like turning out to be the more fucking epilogue, and like Act 2 is going to be not the main hurrah, as it were, the make or break point, which also makes a lot of sense. They think they've escaped. They think, oh, the zombies are all going to be handled, and then they like step outside, like take a car or whatever, and they actually see the problem's a lot fucking huger. Huger, I don't think is a word, but it is now. Let's roll one more time and see if we can come up with something more concrete to work with in terms of like actual roleplay. 96 again. Fucking hell. Truce. And free again. Truce. You can't make this shit up. Truce and agreement. I'm going to roll that one again because that's like exactly the same fucking word. 92. Trial. The truce thing makes me think about like another group of survivors that are driving along, and then the trial bit could be like them driving into the sunset sort of thing with whatever weapons and shit they've picked up, dealing with whatever happens next. I think that's how it ends. Yeah. I have to say, I'm mildly disappointing that with the Act 3, it's just sort of leaning towards like the prelude sort of thing. I had hoped for a bit more, but that's totally okay. It doesn't have to be like so role-playing, dice-rolling friendship. That's just the ideas I've gone with, and I'm happy with the result. I was just a bit disappointed and surprised that it went the way that it did, but this worked. I can make this work absolutely fine. But why the fuck are the zombies fire resistant? I'm going to do some action tables, and if I can't come up with anything, then I will just leave it as a fucking mystery and not focus about it anymore. Unless something comes to me later on, and then I'll mention it at an appropriate point in the video. 65 gives us the result open. And 97, open weapon. Open weapon. So they are a weapon. If there's something in the air, maybe it's something in the water, turning the people dead. I think I'm going to go with the air thing, because I'm sort of lent into like it's flu season sort of thing. And it was meant to turn certain people into like toughened soldiers, you know, that old fucking gag. Not sure if I'm sold on it though. That's the thing. Because it's very fucking difficult to control if you just leave it like that. Or maybe not so much as a war thing, maybe it was meant as a defensive thing. Government is expecting retaliation from Russia or America with stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, and it's just a very weird tactic to make people resistant to being bombed. Because they can't do it any other way, I guess, because the government loves wasting money on fucking botched ideas. That's a fucking wild stretch, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to make that note on my other bit of paper. Oh, of course, they've got infravision as well, so they can detect heat. I'd completely forgotten about that. And they also have an invulnerability to something. which I have yet to decide upon as well. Okay, well, we're talking about... There might be a good place actually to talk about this sort of thing. Like, what is it that the... Obviously, it's fucked about with the chemistry in the brain, and they feed on blood. Probably the infrared thing was like an attempt at, like, dust clouds or some nuclear holocaust, creating some wacky environments or unpleasant living conditions so it keeps the British population strong, you know, fighting against the opposition, sort of that old wartimey shit with a weird twist. Again, I'm really fucking stretching this out. Vulnerability. What could that be? Blood thing makes sense, they just sort of become like fucking parasites. Or a mosquito sort of thing. Like, resistant to heat. Cockroaches. Essentially turning the people into shambling cockroaches. Do cockroaches have like a specific weakness? Because I know we talk about the idea of them being like they would survive a holocaust, which they fucking wouldn't. If anything, wasps would survive a lot better. Do cockroaches have a specific... Do cockroaches have wieners? That's... Thank you, Google.
A few moments later.
Cockroaches hate pungent odours from sources like citrus fruits, peppermint, eucalyptus, lavender, cinnamon, bay leaves, garlic, and citronella. That needs thought. But, yeah, you kind of get the general idea just how straightforward it is to come up with a whole one-shot. And if I was to make this into a campaign, this could be one session, and how it ends could be the beginning of the next session, the survival. And I could carry on planning this with Mythic. It's that straightforward. It's a combination of just 2 dice, this book, and your imagination. None of that fucking generative AI crap. It's not necessary. Using this engages with your creativity and your imagination. Chances are that if you're watching this, you had different ideas of where this could go, and that's fine. That's the wonderful thing about the human imagination, that we can come up with different things. And if we were doing this together, like literally doing this together, we could like make compromises and bounce ideas off of each other. Like, really fucking useful tool. It doesn't have to be all solo stuff. You can fucking purchase this book and have fun in so many different ways, and I strongly recommend that you do the same, because you can come up with some really cool fucking things here, as I've just fucking demonstrated. So yeah, I think with that sort of idea, I should probably get on with some pre-gens and show you what those look like. I have just finished doing the last of the handouts I'm going to be presenting my players for this one-shot of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which, as a reminder, I'm going to be giving them character sheets, going to give them a little rules reference as well, so they know how to play and they don't have to ask me as many questions. And I found from doing these sorts of things over and over, it's kind of useful just to present a little quick start, as it were, so people know how to play. I don't know if All Flesh Must Be Eaten has one, but quite frankly, I just thought it was easier just to provide my own, because it'd be neater and clearer, and I just think it will look just a little nicer as well. And the other thing that I'm doing is that I'm actually going to be presenting them character sheets for the zombies, so if and when their characters die, they can reanimate and they have something to do and not just sit there twiddle their thumbs, which might be a little fun for some, but I think it'll be more fun if them all becoming zombies and then like going after each other, when very appropriate for a fun convention-styled setting such as this. Now, if you follow the rules as written, the core book actually encourages players to make the zombies, and there's like a whole little power scale sort of thing that goes with that, kind of equivalent to choosing the qualities and drawbacks of making player characters, which I have to say now, I've been a little loosey-goosey, you know, almost as loose as your mum, but I've thought it's provided a bit more fun just to fiddle around with things, as I would do your mother. Anyway, regarding the zombies, I haven't done that because, as I alluded to earlier on, I think it's a lot more fun for the games master to have complete control over that, so when the players go in and like be confronted with the beginnings of the apocalypse, they have no idea what to expect, and they learn through play. At least that's the idea anyway, though I can see a lot of fun being had of everybody like sitting around together and designing the zombies and then really getting engrossed with the role-playing element of things. But I'm of the opinion of somebody who runs a lot of horror games and engages with a lot of horror, the less the players load, the more fun that they're going to have, because part of the horror is the discovery of everything. But, you know, that's what works for me. You don't have to take my advice, but I'm assuming if you've gotten to this point in the video, you're pretty determined to hear what I've got to say. So without further ado, let's have a look at Canva, which is where I've done all these handouts. You don't have to, you've probably got your own little system to do that, and that's absolutely fine, but I've just learned how to use Canva, so that's what I'm going to be using for this. And it's nothing too fancy, it's literally just a document with a few tables, a bit of a write-up, dividing up the qualities and drawbacks, which in other games might just be merits and flaws, that sort of thing. And then I've written down the skills separately. Now, the one issue I thought I was going to be having with this is that doing the little bit of mathematics to decide up the secondary skills, because it's kind of written in a kind of quirky, clunky sort of manner that it's like one thing times another one, and you take the value of that times by that one, then add by that. I'm not too sure why they went for something like this. I mean, it works, and it's fairly simple, like to come up with a character within like 10 or so minutes, which is great if you want to come up with a load of ideas on the fly. But I just think it's a little bit clunky. And if you do the norm survivors, or the normal people, because remember, you've got normals, you've got survivors, and you've got inspired, which have like holy powers, which I'm not entirely too sure what zombie flicks they took from at that time. Maybe some sort of cartoon or video gamey, or they wanted something with magic involved because they didn't think people would play it otherwise. I don't know. But they've got different attribute and skill distribution, and because we've got like the average Joe survivor sort of thing, or at least they're not a survivor because there's no survivor involved, they're just normal people, they have the less tools to play with. So it's basically, it ended up me just putting everything at 2, which gave me like a couple more points just to spread across the plane, just to make something 3 or 4 if I was prepared to drop something down to 1, which I've done on a couple occasions. So we have 5 character concepts: the intense office worker, the fitness-obsessed college student, the exhausted parent, which I think might be a bit close to home for some of the people I tend to be running these games for. Because more often than not, the games that I run at the game store tend to be a lot older than I, so I think that might be a bit close to home. Part of the reason why I did it, I thought it would be funny. The obnoxious influencer and the hopeful prisoner, and we've got the zombie one, which I'll show off in a moment. So you're just going back to the top, all the same sort of setup, 2 little tables. I've left some of these boxes blank, so they can just write in the numbers there. Might be a bit too small, but they've got all this other white space to be dealing with as well. And I suspect they'll bring in their own notebooks or whatever. But anyway, there's space available if and when they need it. We've got the qualities there, we've got the drawbacks, we've got the skills there. But otherwise, my little like mathematic issue, I thought it was like very straightforward. Qualities and drawbacks I thought were a little bit generic, and I kind of thought there would have been a bit more, but nothing wrong with that really. It's just rather less than more, and it just seems to work rather than more for the sake of more, It's a weird little juxtaposition that we've got here. And of course, all of these are British based, and none of them know how to use guns except for the hopeful prisoner, which has got like a few different gun skills. And it's not like you just buy guns and then add the points. You have to treat them as an individual skill. So guns with a shotgun, guns with pistol, hand weapon, knife. I couldn't just choose hand weapon. Which I kind of like the divvying up of, because that kind of makes a bit of sense. Just because you know how to drive a car doesn't necessarily mean you know how to drive a truck, and also if you can drive both doesn't necessarily mean that you can drive both as well. I kind of like that divvying up of things, and it doesn't feel that I ever have too few to work with, although some of them are really specific, like acrobatics and acting, which is borderline very close to the smooth talking one. So have a bit of chat with everyone if you're in a situation where you can talk to your group and things. Like, just find out what works and doesn't work. But in my experience coming out with these pre-gens, I didn't think that one character was going to be like a lot stronger than the other one else. Obviously, the hopeful prisoner is going to have some experience with guns, and people might be drawn to that one because, playing with guns in games is exciting. But, this is British based, so I was trying to go for something that was a bit more authentic. And, there's some levels of crime around here. I'm not completely naive to that. And yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on that. Just really straightforward, simple stuff. And then we have the zombie character sheet, which takes on a very similar format. I've put the qualities and drawback together. I've made a note of the attack, because that just seems to be a universal thing with the zombie attack. All the different things that we came up with when we were writing them down on a bit of paper earlier on. And as I was going through them, I've put little tick marks next to them just to remind myself that I had actually done that and I wasn't going to do duplicates, which was important because I knew that some of the traits that you chose for the zombie increased or decreased certain stats. Like, I can't remember which two it was, but one gave them a bit more strength, one upped the intelligence, so rather than being at -2, it's now at -1, and they've got a bit more strength as well. I think it was climbing. But yeah, it just sort of made them a bit more interesting, which I like. I like the fact that you customize these zombies in this game.
So bitches, it's future lore here. Something I forgot to mention in this part of the video is that I like the fact that it doesn't seem too generic either. Like, there are some instances of zombie media that you have, like, brute zombies, fast sprinter zombies, all within the same thing. So something like a Left 4 Dead sort of thing, where you've got like very distinct different types of zombie, and with a more scientific approach, it could make sense that would have like the mutation would affect different individuals in different ways. But sometimes it can just feel a bit too generic, and you're not so much dealing with zombies anymore, but like different types of monsters, which to me at least sort of lessens the horror in some aspects. And that's kind of the approach that I was taking this, that they're all the same but they all have a unique horror to them. But I do like it that it offers you the tools to customize your zombie, so you could build up a portfolio of different zombie types that your players give different types of names for, and then pull them out of different scenarios. I like the flexibility that All Flesh Must Be Eaten have with this game, even though it's not something that I probably won't end up doing. That if I was to get a zombie, it would be one or maybe two different types of zombies at a push. Like, if I wanted to do something that was inspired by 28 Days or 28 Years Later, I'd have like your sort of regular sprinter zombies, and then like fiddle with things a bit more, say like the taller superhuman Goliath sort of things as they're called. So I could do something like that if I wanted to. Or I could just have like the basic zombie stats that are presented in this book as well. I do like the customization that it has of it, and how flexible and open it is, which is great for creativity, and I'm always in favour with things that have been a lot more creative. Even if I don't think it's something that I'm always going to be able to use, I like the fact that, you know, each different zombie game I'll do, I can come up with something different, and it's all really cool, poggers shit.
And then to end our little showcasing here, we have the rules, which is very bare bones, but honestly, there's not a lot to this game, obviously, and I've gone for the cool Z at the end, you know, because zombies, and it's like a thing of the 90s and noughties, so it's all cool and hip in it, bruv. So yeah, the dice needed, the task test, simple, difficult tasks, the rule of 10 and 1, which is probably the most clunky thing with the rules here. I don't know why they just didn't do the standard exploding and subtracting dice. You got the fear tests, and then the very snarky bit at the bottom, anything specific, ask the zombie master of combat. Yeah, it's just all really straightforward there. Obviously got everyone's printed out already, which are over here, which nearer the time I will file away in nice little folders, so everything looks particularly neat. The zombie one, I've printed out 5, even though I only need 4 zombie things, because if there's one person extra who becomes a zombie, it's kind of game over at this point. It's useful to have that sort of shit to myself, so I can actually remember what's going on. And I'm not going to do what I did last time with the pre-gens, where I made a 6th one in case I got an additional player, because the core book actually has a load of pre-gens already ready to go, divided up in Survive and Norm and Inspired. And if I get a situation where I get 6 players rather than 5, I'll just say, okay, take a picture of one of the ones that are labelled Norm, that's your character sheet, and then just leave it at that, and then ask me about what the qualities and drawbacks do and write them down. And there isn't much to talk about regarding the things that they own, because there isn't really anything like mechanical tied to that. It's just, if it makes sense for the character to have this thing, they have the thing, and as it's the beginning of the apocalypse, they're not exactly going to be having much anyway, so I didn't think that was worth putting down. And for a one shot like this, I think it's just more than alright just to say, alright, if it makes sense for your character to have that on their person, go for it. And I haven't included names because I think it's a bit more fun to have the players interact with the pre-gens a bit more and choose the name for their characters. I know some would like to give them specific names, and some other games have presented like a male and female presenting name, which is a really good thing, but for me, just give them full creative freedom, just allow them to express themselves the way that they do, so they can come up with some particularly weird and wacky results if they so want to, and just take the concept in directions I hadn't previously envisioned, which is amazing stuff. That is what we do with tabletop role-playing games. We either build or have a character concept that does one thing and then it goes in a completely different other way. Although with a zombie apocalypse and everything that we've planned, which is written up on a tiny bit of paper so far, who knows what sort of chaos that may well bring. So yeah, as of the recording of this little segment, the 25th of September 2025, there's just over a month and a bit now until I actually have to go and play the game, so that just gives me a lot of time just to make sure that these rules are fresh in my mind, and to pack all the shit that I need ready to go and run All Flesh Must Be Eaten. in person. Since the last part of this video, it has been 1 month and 1 whole day, and it is now time for me to go and pack this big old lovely bag here of all the bits and pieces that I'm going to be taking with me to run All Flesh Must Be Eaten at my local game store. And I think it's also beneficial to remind us all the sort of bits and pieces that you budding games masters will need as a bare minimum to be running this game for the very first time. And I'm going to be packing this here, right here, right now. And the first thing off is the thing I actually forgot about, is the rules, as I showed off earlier on in this video, which are very important for players to know and have these by hand. I've got 5 copies because I'm going to potentially be having 5 players, and I'm going to be storing them nicely in this little black paper wallet thing, just so it's a bit more presentable, so it doesn't get too bent and, you know, shit-faced and all the rest of it. Now, of course, when it gets into the player's hands, they'll do whatever they fucking want with it. They'll draw on it, scribble on it, doodle on it, eat it, you know, it's theirs after that. But I just want to make things look a little nice for when I give it to them, and just shows that I've actually given a damn. Now, the only downside to this, as I've mentioned already, there's not like any fancy official like papers and whatnot. I mean, I have the logo there just to make it semi-official, but to be honest, it doesn't need a lot. It's just the text and the rules, and then we're good to go. In a separate compartment, we're going to put in the character sheets, the concepts, the pre-gens, as you were, and put them into a completely different folder. I could have them share a wallet, but I've done that in the past, and I found that it's just a bit fucking awkward trying to get things out all together. So just have all, you know, the rules in one bit, the pre-gens in another bit, and in this case, your zombie handouts as well. And remember, I have made one pre-gen too many, because obviously, if everybody becomes a zombie in the game, it's sort of game over at that point. But the additional zombie there is for me, so I know what I'm going to be using, you know, zombie-wise, throwing the shit at my players, literally in the case of zombies. So I don't have to like go through the different books and materials more than need be, because it's all there. And again, very happy with how they look, and yeah, lovely stuff. So, what else are we going to add to this bag once I put this away in this lovely little compartment? We're going to be taking the Zombie Master screen, of course, just as a reminder what that looks like again. I know it wasn't too long ago when I showed this off to you. It's all nice and orange like that. Did a nice little panorama thing earlier on, and all the bits and pieces in there. Lovely stuff. So that's going to go nicely in here somewhere. Now, there is like a little wallet for this bag that I think I'm going to put this in, just because this is like a decent card, and I don't want to get this scrunched up too much with everything that's going on in here. And for a similar note, we're going to be adding like the All Flesh Must Be Eaten booklet thing for the Games Master screen. Obviously, it has the Adventure Coffee Break of the Living Dead, but it's got all the other bits and pieces for some of the zombie stuff that I may need to refer to if I haven't been clear enough in my notes at the time. So that's there just in case, and I'm going to put that in there as well. Next is obviously the core book. Very fucking important to take the book wherever you go, whatever game you're running here, folks. You'll want to make sure you've got the core book with you. And that's just going to go in the main pocket there. And in contrast to other games that I've done, this is actually the least amount that I've taken with me. Also, it's the smallest amount of stuff as well, like book-wise, it's not as huge and as thick. Other things that are going to be included there, I'm going to be taking some dice with me as well, some D10s, D4s, and D8s. And I'll just take like the standard D&D standard set, just in case I want to do like a random roll thing and I'm inspired to use another dice type for whatever reason. I would much rather be over-prepared than under-prepared in this instance, and I've got like this orangey, greeny, like very ugly coloured set that I think would work very well for zombie stuff here. It also complements the Games Master screen, which I've just realised as I'm saying that, so there you fucking go. I've got a dice tray as well. I've shown it off before. It's like an acrylic one that an ex made me. I would take the much larger one that I've started using at home, which I much prefer, but it's a bit unnecessary to take something that big. It's a bit bulky, and this like small like square acrylic one I can just slot down there. Lovely stuff. And I'll put a little cloth on top of that as well, so it doesn't roll too loud even my poor sensitive autistic ears. I'll be bringing my food with me as well, because I'm like an animal at the zoo. I'm on a special diet, so don't fucking feed me. I also have many different allergies. That's the joke here. Taking some water. It's very important to have some water with you, or some other form of ingestible liquid, although all liquids are ingestible, but I think you know what I mean when I'm wording it as such. And the front pocket, which I'm not prepared to open right now because I don't think it's necessary, and I'm sort of like compromised with space at the moment. We have an A4 pad of paper and a pen, and make sure that pen works before you set off. Or a pencil, or both, depending on your mood, so you can just jot down notes. And the thing that I tend to do with games that I'm running, because I let the players come up with the names of their own characters, and I'm not going to remember the individuals' names if they bother introducing themselves. They don't always do, oddly enough. So I can just write down, okay, Chucklefuck McGee's there, Wank Face McGee's over there, etc. and so forth. So I can refer to the character's name and point to them on the A4 bit of paper where they're sitting, so I know who I'm talking to, rather than just in an orange, just like flapping my hands and fingers at them just to get their attention. But I think, honestly, that is it. I can't think of anything else that I'll be taking with me. We've got dice, we've got books, we've got resources, we've got food, we've got water. But yeah, we're sort of good to go now. I guess I will have to take the core book out just to refresh myself on some of the rules, because I've got the rules reference there, but I'd like to be a bit more prepared than a handout that I made a month ago. It's always a good idea to be decently prepared for these things. So to answer the question on whether everyone survived or not, I have to be honest with you and say that it was almost no. Now, I may be laughing and smiling at that now, but it did get quite a bit to get to the point where I was having fun, purely because I couldn't actually run it at the local game store. It had to be cancelled, which caused equal levels of frustration and upset on my part. But I was able to run it for the same group of people that I ran recently, The Walking Dead, which is going to appear in a video up there if you want to know how that went on, and also how to run The Walking Dead TTRPG. Interesting that those were both videos of how to run a certain game. They both included zombies, had the same group of players, and also had an interesting development cycle, because the original scenario, group of players, whatever, sort of like got fucked up in one way or another. There's a worrying number of coincidences there. But in any case, I was able to run this, and this is the bit of the video where I actually talk about what happened, who survived, who didn't, and hopefully within my little story, as it were, you'll be able to take something to run away, and include in your own games of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, other zombie games, and just TTRPG sessions in general. And I will apologise up front that the sun's been a bit of a weird cunt at the moment, so there may be times the lighting is fairly alright like this, but if it just pops through again and that's just far too white, or I'm just really dark, that's just the sun being a dick. So apologies up front about that. But without further ado, I'm just going to refer to a page of notes here that I typed up. So if I'm looking down a lot on Ermin and Arin as I'm trying to make head and tails about the shit that made sense at the time, you know why. So we immediately have my concept thrown out the window, because of course, as I was running this at the local game store in a different place, town, whatever, I had the literal scenario in my head, because I'm going to be basing it there. I've already talked about what was going to be happening in that, and I kind of had the geography all sorted out, is what I'm trying to say. But we all did this digitally. Now, I could have, rather should have, put it there as well, but everybody had decided, in the moment, it was going to be set within the town that we're all situated, or at least most of us are, and we know it very well, so I had to fiddle around with the geography in my head just so I made things make a bit more sense. Also, they decided to take all the character concepts and made them into one family, rather than different families all working together, which I suppose now looking back on it would have been the far more sensible thing to do, but I wanted strangers coming together and helping each other, rather than players forcing they had to help each other because they all had that thing of being a family and they knew and they care about each other. But if that's what they want to do, that's fine. It meant that I could just focus on one scenario for everybody, maybe two, depending on if they choose to go and see a different film or whatever. Rather than multiple ones, but at the same time I was preparing for multiple scenarios, so I was a bit thrown having to condense things down, but it wasn't anything that I haven't done before, and I wasn't thrown into the deep end about it. And I'm going to be referring to the characters by their concepts rather than the names they came up with, just because I've shown off the concepts already, and I think it's just a bit easier to process the concept rather than just having a billion different names to work with. Specifically 4, so I had one NPC left over. We had the obnoxious influencer and the fitness-obsessed college student, and those two decided they were siblings. That's some of that cuntish sun behaviour I was talking about on screen now. It wouldn't take long for the fitness-obsessed college student to not be so much focused on fitness, but more being really muscular, hunk sort of thing, just constantly, and I quote, obtaining dat pussy. Which is absolutely fine, you know, the character concept to do whatever the fuck you want with, I guess, but there's just something that just threw me off guard initially. So those two are siblings. You have the hopeful prisoner, who was an older sibling to these two, like mid to late 20s sort of thing, who very quickly stopped being so hopeful, and it wasn't so much to do with the zombies, which I'll talk about later on, and the intense offer worker, who sort of became like the parent of everybody, or babysitter. It was parent, it was definitely parent. I knew there was conversation about being an estranged babysitter, but no, it was definitely the single parent of all of them. So they all entered this local cinema, and I described, you know, the town that we all lived in, and how it was cold, and I think at the time it rained a little bit, so I just played that to it as well. I said it was flu season, so there had some people like coughing and sniffing about. Just a little offhand thing. Nobody really remarked it at the times, like that being a thing that the zombies are going to come from. Purely because there's actually a cemetery not too far from the town centre, so they thought they're going to be rising from the dead sort of thing, because they saw some of the artwork that was in there. So, in the book, I mean, so that's pretty useful to have, that they didn't suspect an illness too much. So they all go in, it's much nicer, it's warmer, the bright neon lights, there's like people coming and going inside the cinema, and the influencer immediately played into their drawback, which is clown, which meant that they had not to take anything seriously. And then there was an opportunity for them to use the other drawback, the covetous one, which basically means if they had to go at an opportunity to chase after fame and renown, they had to make, I think it was a willpower roll. I didn't note that down. I made notes of a lot of the rolls that I made, but I didn't do that one. That was it. Was cost a difficult willpower check. That was correct. Again, I wrote down the numbers for some reason as well, because maths is not my strong point, which I've mentioned many times before. But I did like it that it did not take long for them to make note of their drawbacks and just play into that as part of the character. And the reason why that they went into the influencer sort of covetous mode is because being scolded by the serious office worker fucking about, they wanted like to get out their phone doing the whole like TikToking live streaming thing, and they were saying that very loudly that they were going to live stream the film they're all going to watch. Oh, and they all did decide that they were going to be watching the same film. The players thought it'd be funny to go and see the new Tron film, and the college student and the influencer, I think they were going to just be shouting it's morbing time all the way through. Like it, I've got some very serious players here. It's going to be a fun night. So that happened, and of course they failed. I had to make them do a check to make sure that anybody had heard them, because quite frankly I didn't know what to do for a sample NPC. I would later on, not too long actually, just add 2 for like the standard stats, because 2 for the attributes for the characters is kind of like an average, and like the average citizen would have 2, so I just use that for across the board. And then if it was just anybody that was a bit stronger, or like add 1 or 2 to dice rolls, rather than like focusing too much on skills, because it would have been nice actually, because the book doesn't provide any like sample NPCs, a load of pre-gens, which I suppose I could have used, I guess, but I wanted to use like generic NPC stat for stuff like this, so that's what I decided with. It wasn't the most balanced thing, but it played into like the chaotic nature of things as well. So a member of the store heard them, and they kicked them out. No questions asked about it, because they failed pretty damn hard. So whilst all this shit was the influencer was going on, the prisoner went up to go and like snacks and things to people. Now, in between the role playing with the influencer a bit before and going up to get the food, the prisoner like was feeling like they were being watched and paranoid. They didn't want any trouble from people, and hoping there wasn't like any of like the family about. They didn't ask any roles or things, but like I noticed like in their characters' demeanor, they're all like sort of scrunched up, like looking around, and they're really getting into the role playing things. And because I saw that, I was gonna like capitalize that, like, what's your character thinking about? And when they went to go and buy food, I made them do a disguise and perception check. I might have made it difficult, I don't remember exactly. And they rolled a 1, which is not great. Now, in a game like this, you would have thought that 10s cause dice to explode, and so would 1s, but with 10s, it would add whatever you would roll next, and 1s would take away whatever you rolled next. So kind of a little bit like what Cyberpunk does. But what Flesh Must Be Eaten does something really weird, is that you roll a 10 or 1, we'll focus on the 1s as that's the dice number in question. And then you roll another d10, and depending on the number that you roll, you either don't take anything away, or you take away a certain number. like with a 1 like it's 5 and below, and with 10 it's like 5 and above or something like that. I don't exactly remember the numbers at the moment, but that just got a bit flunky, so I then cleared it with everybody that from here onwards, like if you're rolling a 10 or 1, it explodes, and everyone was alright with that. And I even gave the player who did that roll that they could do that again if they wanted to, as I'm like making a bit of a rule change here, and I didn't want to think that I was giving them the shorthand of things. And no, they were going to accept that. They didn't want to make like any exceptions or anything. Like, this is what we did the first time, no one liked it, so this is what we're going to be doing in the future, which was absolutely fine. It's always a good idea to check these things with your players, and I don't want anybody to presume that I was being an absolute dick, even though that I know that these people weren't really going to care all that much if I just killed them off like that. I just didn't want them to feel like, you know, I was being a dick, as I've mentioned already. So yeah, they did pretty badly. They were in the minuses now in terms of successes, which is such a weird thing to think about. So not only were they spotted, but I think that meant that whoever was there was like really like foaming at the mouth, wanting to kill them in the course of a bit of a scene. They weren't going to launch them because I said they got a family member that's holding them back. It was like, what do you do? The princess said, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna leave. I don't want to cause a fuss. I don't want anybody calling the police or anything, or like, because if anything goes wrong, it's going to get me that gets blamed for it, so I'll just like fuck off and go, which I found a bit surprising, but honestly that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, like dealing with that bit of trauma, like not wanting to upset and antagonize anybody further, and also we're in a crowd of people, if something was to go bad. As that was happening, I was thinking maybe I could play that into a little bit of like becoming a zombie, but then one of my players mentioned it, so I scrapped that idea completely and didn't want to feel that was going to be a bit cheap. But at least they were thinking about it, and at least they're beginning to feel a bit tense. I was introducing the little story bits here and there. Which then also led into the seriousness of the office worker for their drawback that they don't treat anything as a joke, and by this point they're all willing just to take everybody home. Which was going to cause a bit of an issue because now everybody was moving away from the cinema, which is basically where everything was going on. But the college student, who hadn't done anything wrong at this point, and neither did the office worker admittedly, perhaps unintentionally aggravating the influencer and just like goading them into being more of a clown, the college worker was like, no, fuck this, I don't want to fucking go home, I'm going to fucking watch Tron like we said we were going to. And I then had the college student and the office worker like roll against each other just to see who was going to like overpower the next one verbally, which also gave me a bit of time to try and work out how the fuck I was going to introduce the zombies, because it was all supposed to be starting in the fucking cinema. But fortunately, the worker got 8 and the student got 13. Now, I put a lot of things in bold here because I typed all of this stuff, because Lord help me trying to read my own fucking handwriting. Now, by default, you're looking for 9s and above in All Flesh Must Be Eaten, so you roll a d10, add your stats together, and if it's 9 or higher, then you've done the thing. But it does something rather interesting here in that on the Games Master screen in the book, and I'm pointing over there because I had the Games Master screen opened up here on the Windows skill, because again, I did things digitally, sort of around here, books and dice and things. I had my dice tray there, it was all very nice. If for every number that you get above 9, and there are like certain benefits that you get, with combat it's usually you deal additional damage, but with social stuff it's like you're a bit more influential. And I don't remember the exact wording for 13 here, because they do it like groups of 2, I believe, but it basically there's more of a social charm there. So how I worded it is that for the remainder of the evening there would be a modifier on like one trying to persuade the other to do something, which also fed into the office workers' cowardly drawback, meaning they weren't going to push too hard for it. So yeah, it was character and situation dependent. I actually put party dependent, which is an interesting way of putting that. But anyway, I'm waffling a bit about the rules here. The college student decided they were going to stay, and they just sauntered off into the cinema and just left the office worker to deal with the kids. And it's this point that we focus a bit more on the college student, because they hadn't actually had that much role playing here, other than the fact they were just going to be hunting for pussy, end quote. And they were being quite obnoxious with it, like being very over the top and like duck facing and pouting. It was like, hey girls, like sort of thing, like really over the fucking top, and strutting this stuff. And they did that as part of their show off drawback, which meant like take every fucking opportunity to be in the spotlight. Not quite as the same as the covetous fame renowned drawback of the influencer, but they really want to make themselves at the centre of the attention. And it just sort of went a lot more in that direction. They carried on playing. Then being sport focused very quickly went out the window, and they just wanted to try and chat with girls and get a date for after the film. So I made what I then dubbed the Hunting the Pussy role, which they did really fucking well on. They got 14 above 9, and I made a comment saying that they'll get a +2 on the next role only. And then the second role, the Obtaining the Pussy role, basically the conversational stuff with a girl who I then played up being a bit ill with the sniffles or whatever, because it was cold, and because I'd already established that people coughing and sneezing, it wasn't too out of the ordinary, but the players were beginning to suspect that this is how I was dealing with the zombies. But it just became a lot more funny that this guy was so fucking desperate to hook up with someone that he just doesn't care. He says something to the effect of like, "Oh yeah, I really dig them sick chicks." And the funny thing is that tickled me just because it rhymed, not because of how fucking filthy it was. And I asked them how they wanted to do it, because I didn't really know the sort of role to give them. So, well, I'm just going to be like, flexing my muscles and just giving it all of that, So I went for a will and weightlifting role, because that was like the closest thing that I had to like showing off the muscles, and muscles are generally generated with weightlifting. We're talking a stereotypical sense, which gave them a result of 12 brackets in my notes. Social roles get extra benefits. Now, I'm obviously not telling the players that, I'm just describing the benefits here, because you don't want to fucking read what it says in the book or the GM screen. I'm again pointing there because I have the GM screen there. You want to tell them what they are, rather than just being very dry about, like, make it engaging to it. So the way that I went into this, because I now knew how the zombies were going to be revealed properly, because you may recall I had that really cheesy idea of like a couple getting it on, and like that crude. It was now going to be on that player. Like, this girl wasn't just so much like needy of a partner, was like really turned on by him, but like she was fucking wet, mate. Like, she wanted to go at him right fucking now, could barely get her hands off herself, could barely get her hands off him, and everyone was like, holy fuck, man, like, she really wants you, man, really digging you. So they then went off into the cinema, and she sneezed again, apologised for her cold, and like the guy was just over the fucking moon, and like, the player, I think, was really excited at this point that he's doing really fucking well, and like everyone else who's been like shitting on their role so far, put a pin in that, we'll get back to that. So I then moved outside, and I didn't really know what to do at this point, because they have all left the cinema, and I knew there were going to be like zombies running about, but the narrative, it was all happening too soon. But that's fine, I could work with this. So I then threw it back at the players and just asked them what they were all doing. Now, the influencer was stood on their live stream with their phone, and they didn't really care. They were going to be reporting all this, they were going to dox them, they're going to do all this. They've been really fucking shitty about it. And I made them do a rollout just to see how well like they're being perceived by their fans, and annoyingly, for everyone else at least, they rolled really well. So like, oh, I can't believe there's docs and there's shit in their house, set things on fire, like just stuff like that. And the influencer just thought it was like ooh cute just all the way through. It was just all a load of silly fun. And out of nowhere, the player who was the prisoner just exploded in this emotional time, just how their night was ruined, how they can't ever fucking do anything, they served their time and they're still being treated as like subhuman. Interestingly, this was the same player in the Walking Dead campaign that played the character that was pregnant. And very two different personalities that were there, but they also dropped like a massive fucking bombshell to everybody else, and like, they just stormed off into the night, and I did have to pause things a little bit. Okay, that was very sudden. Is everyone alright? Yes, they were, so we carried on. But, just because of how sudden and engaged it was, I just wanted to make sure that they were, like, in character, or they were genuinely angry with how things went. But knowing that bit of knowledge, it was great to see that roleplay and then getting into the cat, and they just stormed off down an alleyway where the quickest way back to where the car was parked, which then gave me the idea how the zombie is going to be introduced, because there's quite a bit of a homeless problem anywhere in the world, but particularly in the town at the moment, and they had to go parking past a shopping centre. As I said, a lot of homeless people like causing trouble in one way or another. Some are more aggressive than others, and there was like a few people like just mulling about, just like arming and arming or whatever, and I had the player just trip up on one of them just because they're in the wrong place, and I wanted to see how the player would react to that. They got up and they just shout at the person just to move out the fucking way, like, what are you doing sleeping in the middle of the road for? I didn't have them say anything. It's like, I'm talking to you, what are you doing? He kicked him over, and then they saw the guy was dead. But before I had the zombie attack proper going on outside, we moved back into the cinema where the college student and his new bit of pussy, end quote, were going to watch the new Tron film together. And because of the previous roles that happened, well, previously, with the college student, and you know how well he had done, how horny she was, etc., and so forth. It wasn't even 2 minutes into the film because I'd rolled a D6 at that time just to see how long it would wait. It just so happened to land on a 2, and she like unzipped his trousers and was just like jerking him off. And for him, it was the best fucking thing of his life. Like in character, he was really playing like, oh my god, like this is so fucking amazing. How did I manage this? And because of that, I fed into that a little bit. Like he was excited and I dare say nervous. Like it'd been a very long time, so he felt like the familiar numbness of a stranger jerking you off in a cinema. And the players were beginning to suspect that the zombie was going to pounce on him here. But it took everyone different levels of time to realise that it was the girlfriend. That was the zombie. And funny enough, it was the college student player who would realise last because of what was about to happen and how he reacted. Like... fucking brilliant. It's one of my finer moments as Game Master, I have to say. So, rather than teasing it, or dick teasing it, I should say, let me tell you what happened. So, at this point, the girl was now dying. Basically, she was going to become a zombie through illness. And so she's jerking them off, and the gesture is just getting weaker because she's just slowly dying, just can't keep up the pace. So the next 2 roles I had the college student do were, what was it? It was Will and Notice, and they were difficult roles, and the way that modifiers works for All Flesh Must Be Eaten is that you've got like a range of modifiers for each modifier grouping. And with difficult, I believe it's -1 to -3. I chose -3 just because of how well he was playing into the moment and just to match that level of like he was blotting the whole world out because he was having the best hand job of his life. Failed that one to notice the grip was getting loose. And then I had him roll it again when she stopped and like went down on him head first, so to speak. That was to notice that she wasn't going to basically suck the cum out of him, but more sucking the blood out of him. Because remember, these zombies are interested in sucking blood like vampires. So, they failed that roll as well. And I think at this point, everyone was beginning to notice, oh no, you're not going to fucking bite him there, are you? And it's like, well, you don't notice it. You know, it's like, you notice that it's not the best blowjob that you've had. You know, it's all teeth, no lips, you know, there's not really much of a great technique there, but you're in a cinema, you're not really supposed to be doing this, like, what much can you do? And also, you're still feeling fucking excited about all of this going on. And then she bites your dick clean off. And that just stunned everyone, because that was just kind of how I delivered things here. And this is where things turned particularly spicy, shall we say, to our college student, because a zombie bite does d6 times 2 piercing damage, which means that if it's done to a vital organ, you take that result and triple it. Now, the genitalia of a man or trans person is a vital organ. If that is like lobbed off unsafely, such as, I don't know, being bitten off by a zombie, you're gonna die pretty fucking quickly, right? So, I then rolled the d6, and I showed them the result to make sure that I wasn't bluffing it, because I rolled a 6. 6 times 2 is 12, triple that is 36. The player, who had a merit, I can't remember the exact name for it, that gives them additional health, now had 1 HP left. But it gets even better, because what I was supposed to do here is get the player roll on the fear table, which is one of the more cooler aspects of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, where I can't remember the exact ruling of it right now, but you roll your willpower with any other modifiers. If you fail, then you go to this fear table, and then you're actually looking for failures here to see your character's reaction. But I didn't do that, because when all of this happened, the character had described the all going into hysterics and just couldn't do anything, just screaming, "Ah, my dick! My dick!" It was one of the funnier moments in the game, but because I said they were going into total hysterics, I highlighted the fear table, and that was one of the conditions here. And that meant that they couldn't do anything for like d6 rounds. Beg your pardon, 1 d8 rounds, and I rolled a 6 again on the d8. So they were basically dead at this point, because they weren't going to be able to do anything for 8 rounds. But the zombie was going to go and bite again. They rolled a 5, times 2 is 10, times 3 is 30, which took it down beyond -10, which is a weird fucking thing to say in a TTRPG, but that means if your health goes to -10, you have to make a survival test, which is the roll that I had to refer to in the book. Because I couldn't find it on the character sheet, and it's a Constitution plus Will roll, and if they survive a little bit more, and they have to keep doing it each and every round. But they failed the first round, so they died. So the first bite was the one that made the mistake, and the second one killed them. Which means that I officially killed a player by having their dick and bollocks bitten off by a zombie. There's going to be very few things in my TTRPG career, as it were, as a games master, that is going to top the over-the-top silliness, the horror, and the sheer brutality of somebody succumbing to zombie fellatio. Yeah, I had to make sure the player was alright with all of that because of just how stunning it was, and we're just fucking laughing about it. Just like, yeah, that's a fucking great way to go. And that's when I then said, don't worry, it's not the end of the game for you. I'm going to send you this now. Don't say anything to anyone about it. I didn't make this as a group announcement, I just sent it as a private message, and of course referring to the fact that I then made their character a zombie. So they shut up for a minute as we moved back into the shopping car park where the homeless had basically become the zombies, and now the other two, the influence and the prisoner, were now having to fight off these zombies, and they were very quickly overwhelmed. And it was here when they realised the body parts could move on their own, because somebody like picked up a bit of wood from like some scaffolding, because there's a bit of work going on over the moment, just like smacked an arm off. That's when they realised the arm was moving towards them. And I retconned something a little bit here, because when I designed it I was expecting like the body parts to move like at the same pace or a bit slower. But because they were talking about how safe they were, because as long as they just kept moving quickly, the slow shambling horde wouldn't be able to get them. I then retconned it's like, okay, you can chop off their limbs, but you're now going to have like a fucking hand like scurry across, like feint at you, or toe just like tiptoeing away sort of thing. And I had that image in mind at the point, and what would happen later when the characters were taken to the camp, which would so happen to be in the next town, which would up the ante being taken to this safe place, because they weren't quite too sure where they were, and they would have driven not too far, but long enough for them to worry about which direction they were going. There would be like a zombie foot that I would have like scurrying on its toes like that, which is a very weird sight, but it scared the shit out of them anyway. And that's when they realised, oh shit, the body parts can move a lot faster, we don't want to get fucking infected or anything. And they hurried out. With all the screaming and whatnot that was happening, the office worker made a roll to see if they could hear them, and they didn't. Like they heard like noise and things. Oh, it's just another fucking wild night in the town. And that's when they heard everybody coming out the cinema, because there was now zombies in the cinema. And that's when the college student returned as the zombie. And I went to the player and said, okay, you want to do this? Roll that. It's like, what? You've made zombie sheets for us? Yep. And that was quite fun to deal with as well. The office worker didn't do anything about it because he was cowardly. He just fucking ran. He ran back to the car, which is when he realised the zombie news was happening. There was a bit of a scuffle to get into the car. And this is where the prisoner had died, because they decided they were going to sacrifice themselves because they had a I can't remember if it was a drawback or conviction or whatever the thing's called, where they will trust their family over everyone else, and like everyone else like fair game to do whatever they want. They sacrifice themselves just to distract the zombies a little bit so they can get in the car and like just drive off to safety somewhere, which was a pretty cool moment. I had a little bit of a chase, the zombies now coming in different directions. They didn't last too long, unfortunately, just because of how many zombies I had about. They were going to die, and they were sort of like choked off, but it was a really good moment on the role play. And I threw their final scenario back at them in this heroic moment. I describe the final moments, and it was them that described like them being choked off, and they ran to this bit and zombies came that way, and he's like fighting them off this way and the other, and he sort of like gave this battle cry and just let the zombies just devour him sort of thing. It was honestly some really cool shit, which left the office worker and the influencer like to drive off into the sunrise or sunset, as it were. And this is where things became a little railroady, not because I wanted to get them towards the end, but because I was like wanting to, in a narrative sense, control the characters a bit more, because they would get captured, they'd be put in this facility, their movements and whatnot are going to be restricted, they'll be able to integrate and interact with other different people. I did the endurance test, and sure enough, one failed, the other succeeded, so they were split off, which is great for role-playing here. Drove off into the car, and all these different vans and whatnot would come and arrive. They crash into a van. I made them do like 3 different drive tests to like avoid people, and they did it. On the third one, they failed, and that's when I had them hit the van. The soldiers came at the told them to get into the van. They thought they'd been taking them to safety, but then they sort of found out that actually there's sort of weird some fucking experiment shit that going on, and they were quite disgusted by all of this. The office worker died here because the zombies like came over the fences. I know they seem to be like the only people that were aware that the zombies could detach their body parts and like control them. And like I had like the military. Oh, that does sound fucking stupid. What the fuck are you talking about? But then it was the influencer that had found out that actually they knew about this. They were like preparing this like nuclear winter sort of thing. They had their phone confiscated because they kept fucking taking pictures of everything. So they want to get their phone back. And then in a wonderful bit of character development, they're going to be using their influence, like influencer state, as it were, not to make something about themselves, but to warn people about those zombies, and also to make everyone aware that the government's in on it. They're trying to kill us, which they were barely able to do whilst being chased. They did lose their phone again. But the office worker was killed by zombies, just because they tried to run and fight out. And it's just one of those situations with them that they just didn't roll very well. But it was interesting that character then played up being a bit more optimistic about things. Like, the government's right, like, let's try and sort this out. They've got things under control here. And I just think that they played into that, like, butt-licking sort of attitude a lot more, whereas the influence was being the far more heroic character here. I just love the differences in the approaches here, and and I was going to have them like meet and like escape together, but it was just unfortunate that the office worker died before any of that could happen, and then the influencer barely managed to escape. With a group of other people like driving along, like, we need to get out of here, like, you come along with us sort of thing. And they got into the car and like recounting their thoughts, thinking about their loved ones and everything, like what they could do to try and change. And hopefully now they've got like this influence to follow, like people are going to be more aware that you don't trust the military, don't trust the cops and everything else. And a bit of survival tips with these zombies, like they can detach their limbs and their intestines. How the influencer managed to get out, and the scenario set up with them like in the little container with the different zombies in there was wild, because I had some NPCs that interact with the zombie that was in there, because the idea was that more than one of them would like fail an endurance roll and become zombies, but literally only one of them did. And I was using Mythic actually on the side to generate different interaction things, because this is all going like completely out of control here. And one of them had a bit of broken glass and like trying to cut them open, not aware that the intestines would then leap out and like strangle them and pull them in and get bitten, which made it a bit more parasitic like in nature. And because that sort of thing had happened, there was some scientists said, "Oh shit, this wasn't supposed to happen. It's all gone too much. It's too good." Their experiments have like fucked up, etc. and so forth. So that was pretty lucky for the influencer to go and survive all of that. But as they were driving off in the car, I made them do one final endurance roll. They drove off, they failed, and I just said, "You've got a bit of a scratchy throat. You just give a little to clear it. Rub your nose." Because the players knew that that's sort of one of the ways that it starts, and now they're in a trapped car with a load of people. So it's a bittersweet ending, I feel, to that. But yeah, everyone had lots of fun. So that's what I mean when I said that not everyone survived, or not almost everyone survived, I guess. Now, I'm really happy about how things went. A bit miffed it didn't happen in the venue and the strangers that I suspected it would have been. But on the plus side, I don't think I've been able to go as much detail and be so gross with things with people I weren't too aware about, because I do not think I would have gotten away with like that ERP adjacent description with a stranger. That would not have gone well for me, but I did want to include that in there somehow, because I did think it was just a bit funny, a bit lightheartedness, and because it's adults we can all take that sort of thing. But overall, I am really happy with how that went. And it's kind of cool that the players want to do more stuff like this in the future, so hopefully I can run more zombie games for them someplace, somehow. As we draw to the end of this video, I know there's going to be some people who think that I've really given you a whole lot of nothing in this video other than designing a What All Flesh Must Be Eating campaign and or one-shot with your own imagination and in collaboration with the Mythic GM emulator. But I hope that between all of this, the idea that I want to give away to all of you is the fact that you really need to embrace chaos, particularly with a zombie game with anyone and everything could die at any given moment, either really hilarious methods, tragically heroic, or just outright fucking tragic and brutal. All Flesh Must Be Eaten is a zombie game that really offers the game's masters and players run whatever fucking game that you want, but it's got to have zombies in it. So really, you could have a thriller, you could have fucking Kung Fu, World War One, or like do something that I've just done and have a little bit of fucking everything in there, because fuck it, why not? And you're going to have something that's going to be really tragic and serious, something that's a bit silly, and there's just lots of possibilities with All Flesh Must Be Eaten, and I feel the thing that has really stood out in much all of this is that you kind of need to embrace the chaos and really lean into the violence and the horror of players dying really fucking quickly, normal individuals not being able to deal with much from a zombie despite how slow or incapable they are, that once you up the numbers a little bit and just have them roll on fear tables and just have them lean into their characters being like frightened, panicked, in many cases idiotic, then that's where a lot of the fun is. You're going to have to embrace the setting and just making sure that everyone is fully on board with this, just to have a bit of dumb, silly fun in your games. And again, at the Games Masters, you do need to lean into the fact that this is a horror game and it's violent and your players are going to die. And if you feel bad about killing your characters and want them to play a bit more, give them a zombie sheet. It's not something that's recommended in this book for some fucking bizarre reason, probably because it does away with some of that horror, but I would actually argue it adds a lot to the horror, because yeah, sure, you could argue that it does away with anything meaningful because the players are still being able to play, but they're now a twisted version of themselves, and their friends, family, lovers, basically the rest of the party and any other NPCs are going to see those people, oh no, they got you too, now I'm going to have to kill the person that I love, really care about, etc. and so forth, which is varying levels of tragic. Now, that didn't happen in this game, funny enough. But there were those moments where they sort of, oh my god, it's you, no. I'm just laughing because they did also describe that he's got like a big fucking hole in his crotch, just where something was chomped off, you know. But yeah, you need to embrace that and make sure that your players know that you're going to kill them off any one point, because if you're just going to like coddle and protect them through something like this, then you really shouldn't be playing a game that's literally called All Flesh Must Be Eaten. So yeah, again, as I keep saying, embrace the chaos, embrace the violence, and just don't be too serious about things either. Like, have fun with it. Like, if you're doing like a one shot like I've just done and you want to lean things into be a bit more serious, by all means go for it. Like, obviously, if you want to do something that's a lot more serious and it's akin to The Walking Dead, but you don't want to do something that's literally The Walking Dead, you're going to have your serious moments, but this game accommodates a lot of different needs, which is why my advice for this has been very minimal beyond what I personally believe is really obvious stuff, because I love horror, I'm very infused with it, and I have a lot of experience with horror, but it might not be for you. Running games like this might not be so apparent to you, so I'm hoping that something within this video has been helpful, and it's been able to encourage a lot of ideas for you to go and run All Flesh Must Be Eaten and other horror games and zombie games in general. Now, if there are bits of advice that you deem to be really obvious that you feel that I've missed, or worthwhile sharing to other people who are wanting to play this game or horror in general, leave them down in the comments below, because I think it would be a wonderful opportunity just to expand the creative minefield, as it were, that is running a chaotic shitfest that is All Flesh Must Be Eaten. Quite literally, as we're talking about zombies and decomposing flesh. And I'd just love to hear your experiences with this game as well. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you feel indifferent about it? Are you going to be playing it now? I really hope that you are, because it does not take long to learn how to run at all. Character creation, despite having some weird, clunky, formulaic maths, takes no more than 10 or so minutes. Like, and even if you don't want to come up with a load of pre-gens or like get players to make their own, there's a load in this book for you to go and use as well. Like, there are so many different ways you can be engaging with this game, and I think it will be a missed opportunity that if you don't. Now, if you want to buy a physical copy, Drive-Thru-RPG is not going to be able to provide that to you. I often promote Drive-Thru-RPG because, all things considered, I think it's an excellent resource. Chances are you're going to have to go and purchase a copy off of eBay or some other second-hand site. This copy of mine came from eBay. This is the revised edition, which is actually no different to the original print at all. The only thing that's really different about it is that it includes a modern conversion system, which is quite frankly fucking meaningless because it has the whole fucking game system in here. But hey, if you want to put this into D&D 3rd edition and above, go ahead and do the maths, I guess. But you can find PDF copies of this and all of the All Flesh Must Be Eaten line on Drive-Thru-RPG, which I'm going to provide a link to every single one of those books down in the description for you to go and purchase and start running right now. Now, if you purchase them with those specific links, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate from Drive-Thru-RPG, and that sort of coinage is going to be absolutely amazing to provide more awesome content like this to you, and so much more. And it means that you get books, GM screens, cards, and whatnot. I get books and shit, and you get content for free, which, I don't know if you're keeping track of the shit maths I was just giving, but you are the one that's benefiting most from this, honestly. So that would be absolutely amazing if you could do that. But if you've got those things already, or you want to include something else into your All Flesh Must Be Eaten games, because I know there's some more generic horror things out there that will be helpful for you, what you can do is copy the affiliate code in the URL and paste it into whatever it is that you choose to purchase before you add it to the cart, and that's going to help me all the same financially. But if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to be eating your brains out, you know, if you don't do this. It's a purely optional thing, so if you can and you're going to buy things on Drive-Thru-RPG, you might as well use one of those links or put in the affiliate code. But if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine as well. But what you should definitely do, regardless, is give the video a little thumbs up, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel, and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do, and I'll see you on the next upload, wherever and whenever that may well be for you. And until next time, brains!